the cross, before the cross, it was evening, and there was light, but it was like just the moon reflecting. It was a shadow. So here Moses is asking for the glory, and God gives him, voila, the commands of life. The commands of life. 10 commandments. He says, you will serve the Lord your God. You will not make no image before him. He says, you will not use his name in vain. I think there's some countries we need to help them right. You shall not use the name of God in vain. Then he says, you will keep the Sabbath. What? You will keep there, the seventh day is the Sabbath, and you will keep the seventh day as a reminder that God is going to lead you to the seventh day, a rest. What is the seventh? If he says keep the Sabbath, it's a picture, it's a foreshadowing of that perfect day that God is going to take us back to, the seventh day. And then he says, honor your father and your mother. And if you look at any nation that disregard their parents, and listen, your parents made mistakes or anything. It's not that whether your mom was right or your dad was wrong or whatever. It is honor for God bringing you into this earth and going to take you to his promise, the seventh day. Because you were brought from the bosom of the Father into this realm where you carry the image and the likeness of God, and you're going to go into the seventh day and bring it back to creation. You have to honor where you come from. Then, I want you to look at this. These 5 has all to do with the purposes of God on the earth. Then the next 5, isn't it amazing? There were 2 stones together, and the one deals with God honored on earth. And the next one tells you how to conduct your life. He says, do not kill. What was the first thing that went wrong? Cain killed Abel. Then he says, do not commit adultery. What? God had a garden. A garden means a bride. This is why, you know what, you can be legalistic about divorce and everything, but thank God we don't live under the law, because most people will really not make it. So this is why we need to understand what is going on here. Do I now say that you can just go on? No. We need to know the purposes of God, because in Ephesians he says, this is how a man and a woman need to conduct their lives in marriage. And then he says, but this is a mystery. He talks about Christ and the church. What? Christ and the church, because it's a bride. God planted a garden eastward in Eden. Garden is a bride. When Jesus gave his body, he said, this body is now broken for you, eat it. And he broke bread. Because God said, you're going to till the ground. The curse was, you're going to till the ground. And in your sweat, you're going to bring forth. Moses, in this system where he asked to see God's glory, God said, I'm going to rain down manna for you. They ate manna. 40 years in the wilderness, they ate manna. And they had to pick it up. And on the 7th day, it was not there picking up. It's all pictures. We have to get it. When Jesus came, they said, show us a sign. Just after he broke the bread. Come on, man. When Jesus came in, Satan first met him and said, make the stones bread. The stone is the law. I'll show it now to you. Satan actually said, let the law go on. Just let the law go on. It will be okay. He says, no, I'm going to fulfill the law. The next, he took him to the temple and the pinnacle, and then he said, took him to a high mountain and said, bow before the kingdoms of the world. No, you can't, because in Daniel already there were 3 people that didn't bow, and he became the 4th man. Why would he bow now? So 4. It was now the 3 days of preparation now turned into the 4th 4 days, because Christ became the completion of the preparation for us to step into the rest. But we're busy with the commands now. So the first 5 commands is all about God and his purposes on earth. And the next 5 is like for us. Don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't steal. Don't steal. And then he says, do not bear false witnesses, and do not covet, because these things are all things. You know what? If you don't understand anything, and you've got no insight in nothing, and you just keep these, you will make it. You'll be a good person. So this was given in 2 stones to the people, God and man. God working with man. And we know that Moses came from the seed line of Abraham. And Abraham is where God came down in the form of Melchizedek, and he shook man's hand and he said, bread and wine, I'm coming to bring the Sabbath to you. I'm coming to bring you out of this. And this is why in Moses, this commands was given, what actually came from Abraham, from the heart of God, the commands of life to keep you to life. My word, before they even got the commands, while it was still being given, they started worshiping cow. They worshiped the cow. Around the cow, they were committing adultery. So with that goes lying and stealing and coveting and the rest. It all goes, it's like, he says, if you break one of the laws, it's like the rest just crumbles. And in that worshiping the cow, they didn't recognize where they came from. They must have thrown away God's name. They broke all the commands right there. Moses came down, broke the commands, and God said, now we're going to rewrite them over. And these commands, it was cut out of a mountain. So when Daniel was there and he interpreted the dream of the king, he said, King, there was a rock cut out from the mountain, which going to hit this rock. Moses, when he asked to see the glory, he said, there's a place beside you on the rock. So what I want to say here is that it doesn't matter how you mess up. It doesn't matter how man messes up. God's purposes is set from beginning to end. So Annalise, does that mean we can do what we want to? I think Romans 6 answers that question. He says, you can't just do what you want to. That will be the last free act you will have. But what we're talking about is to understand the purposes and the plans and the times and the seasons. So here the command was given to them and they broke it. Now, the law was added to the commands of life. It is different. So when he comes in 1 John and he says, there's a new commandment. It's in you and it's in Christ. It means the law is no more, because the law ruled from Moses to Christ. But the law was a shadow of the things to come. The real thing is the bright light of Christ. And how do you describe that death is the best thing that could happen? Because we are now in a time period, and the time period is divided between night and day. And all the history before Christ was a preparation for the Christ to come. So in the law system, there was a system given of tabernacle that is a picture of the Christ. He says, the law is a schoolmaster unto Christ. But when Christ came, we no longer need the schoolmaster. Now, the law was so infiltrated by Satan's seed because of the battle for seed that they totally missed it, and they took everything in their own hands. Now you must know this is a system of worship, and the law rules was the commands of life, and the commands of life, they turned into a stoning system to kill people and to get people, because Matthew 23 says they now sit in Moses' seat. They sit in Moses' seat and they use it to edify themselves. They turned the whole system around because they were infiltrated with Satan's seed. So they carried the whole sacrifice system. So when John said, behold the Lamb, everybody should have known that he was to bring the final sacrifice. In Jerusalem, they took us to where the shepherds were in the field. And I would say it's about 8-10 kilometers from where Christ was now actually born. And there's these grottos. And they say when the sheep were pregnant, the shepherds never went to sleep that night. They would sit and watch these lambs. And as they were born, they kept this system to the point. As these little lambs came out, they were immediately inspected. And if there was no blemish on them, they would be wrapped in swaddling clothes and immediately taken to the temple in case something would happen to these lambs. So when the angel said, you will find a babe in swaddling clothes, they knew it. They knew exactly, because they kept this law, and they were really onto the law. Now Jesus came and he said, I fulfill the law. But what they did is they used the law to kill the Christ, and they missed their Sabbath day. When Christ said, I have come not to annul the law, to fulfill the law. And he came, John came announcing the kingdom is at hand. Jesus came preaching the kingdom. He's actually standing up and saying, I am your rest. I am your Sabbath. So Jesus brought the Sabbath because God himself came down in the form of man, and he brought